it's hurtful. It's hurtful. You know, like at the end of the day, I come home here and I have my water and my apartment and whatever, but I'm alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like an MC club, you know, like a motorcycle club, like a brotherhood, whatever. You know, wrestling is not like that.
Joan Marie Lauer died on April 17th, 2016 at age 46 from an accidental overdose of alcohol and prescription drugs, remembered forever as Chyna, the ninth wonder of the world. A woman who shattered barriers in professional wrestling only to be broken by the very world she helped create, because this is not just the story of her rise, but of how the monsters around her shaped the making of one. As Joan was born on December 27, 1969 in Rochester, New York, and her life was quickly defined by instability when her parents divorced at age 4, followed by a childhood filled with trauma and displacement as her mother remarried 3 times, cycling through stepfathers who brought chaos into her life, including one who threatened suicide in front of her, leaving a lasting psychological scar on a child too young to process it. While her biological father struggled with alcoholism, creating dangerous and unpredictable situations that culminated one night when he stabbed her mother in the thigh with a butcher knife as Joan watched, an image that never left her. And between 1973 and 1983, the family moved constantly from place to place, denying her any sense of roots or stability, and teaching her early that nothing in her life was permanent. And by age 13, Joan turned her pain inward, developing bulimia nervosa and beginning to purge after meals as her relationship with her body became another battlefield where food felt like an enemy, her reflection a source of shame, and the eating disorder followed her for years as a silent struggle woven into an already fractured life. A secret war was waged in bathrooms and behind closed doors while the world only saw what she allowed, and in 7th grade that struggle darkened when a much older teacher at Penfield High School sexually kissed her. An early violation that quietly shaped how she understood trust and safety from that moment on. She was a child and he was an authority figure, and that violation became another brick in the wall she was building around herself, another reason to trust no one, and another wound that would never fully heal. At 16, her mother tried to force her into drug rehabilitation despite Joan not using drugs at the time. A cruel irony where imaginary problems were addressed while the real ones, her eating disorder, the trauma from the teacher's assault, and the damage from witnessing domestic violence, were ignored. And fed up with the dysfunction and constant false accusations, Joan left home to live with her father, the same man who had once stabbed her mother, because even that felt like a lesser harm than staying where she was. But even he felt like a lesser harm, and she finished high school in Spain to put an ocean between herself and her fractured family before enrolling at the University of Tampa, hoping college would be a fresh start and a chance to build a life on her own terms. Yet instead she was raped by 2 men, an assault that shattered whatever optimism she had carried to Florida and compounded every previous trauma. And although she graduated in 1992 with a degree in Spanish literature, the emotional scars from her college years never fully healed and followed her into every relationship, career decision, and moment that required trust. While her body had already betrayed her long before wrestling when she developed an ovarian tumor as a teenager, a potentially life-threatening condition that went undetected for too long because her abdominal muscles from intense fitness training were so strong she could not feel the warning signs, meaning the very strength she was building to protect herself had hidden a danger growing inside her. And on her way to her first job as a flight attendant, she was involved in a car crash that hospitalized her for 4 days, causing the job opportunity to disappear and yet another door to close. And as if that were not enough, her father secretly took out $40,000 in student loans in her name without her knowledge, a betrayal that was financial but cut far deeper than money. The man she turned to after her mother failed her betrayed that trust for his own gain, and she had not seen her mother since age 16, while her relationships with her siblings remained distant and broken as her older brother Sonny and sister Kathy became far-off figures in a family shattered beyond repair, leaving Joan with the feeling that everyone who should have protected her had failed her and everyone who should have loved her had caused her pain. And long before she ever stepped into a wrestling ring, she survived through jobs most people never discuss: working as a cocktail waitress in a strip club, singing in a band, answering a 900 number chat line, selling pagers, and belly dancing alongside her sister Kathy, while also entering fitness competitions hoping her powerful physique would finally be celebrated. Yet in 1996, she finished last at the New York City Regional Fitness America pageant because her build was considered too large, reinforcing the lifelong message that she was too much, too big, too muscular, too different, and too intimidating as judges saw her strength as something wrong rather than special, which pushed her toward Ludwik Killer Kowalski's wrestling school where her size and power could finally be assets. Though the physical cost came early when she ruptured her breast implants during a match and needed expensive custom replacements, showing wrestling was taking its toll before she even reached the spotlight, and her career officially began in 1995 under the name Joni Lee when she debuted against men on the independent circuit, something almost unheard of at the time, as she took bumps, delivered punishment, and proved that gender was not the limitation everyone believed. And in 1997 she joined the World Wrestling Federation as Chyna, a name chosen because, like the country, she was seen as a sleeping giant, and she became the enforcer for D-Generation X, the rebellious faction that defined the Attitude Era. She stood behind Triple H and Shawn Michaels, the silent threat that made their words carry weight, and male wrestlers reportedly felt intimidated by her presence, sparking internal disputes over her hiring as some in the locker room didn't know how to handle a woman who could legitimately hurt them. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing over 180 pounds of solid muscle, a physique the industry had never seen before, and while some wrestlers complained or questioned whether she belonged, her place in D-Generation X was undeniable because she wasn't there to be protected, she was there to protect others.
When you came on the scene, women's wrestling was absolutely dead at that point. I mean, once Alundra left, literally there was nothing. Everything that's happening today, in my opinion, you are 100% responsible for.
She was the first woman to enter the Royal Rumble, standing in the ring with 29 men and eliminating several of them, and the image of Chyna throwing men over the top rope was revolutionary, showing audiences something they had never seen before. A woman competing on equal footing with men in the most testosterone-fueled environment in sports entertainment. And she became the first woman to compete in the King of the Ring tournament, advancing through brackets that had always been exclusively male, while also becoming the first woman to win the Intercontinental Championship, a title held by legends like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Winning it twice to prove her first victory was no fluke, and she captured the Women's Championship as well, demonstrating she could dominate in any division, with plans even existing for her to win the WWE Championship at SummerSlam 1999, which would have made her the first woman to hold the company's top prize and main event. The second biggest pay-per-view of the year, yet bookers deemed her in-ring skills insufficient and cancelled it, showing that the glass ceiling she was shattering had limits imposed not by her abilities but by the narrow vision of those making decisions, proving that even as she broke barrier after barrier, some walls were still impossible to break.
So you literally represent women's wrestling, in 2000. And that's why I think you're looked at like an iconic figure. And not only that, but let's face it, there hasn't been anyone close to you, nor will there ever be.
In the late 1990s and early 2000s, she was the ninth wonder of the world, appearing on magazine covers, action figures, and video games, while also navigating love, betrayal, and the politics of power. As from 1996 to 2000, Joan Lauer was in a relationship with Paul Levesque, known as Triple H, one of the biggest stars in the WWF, and a main eventer destined for even greater influence within the company, and they lived together in their Connecticut home, building what she believed was a future. While keeping the relationship secret to avoid perceptions of favoritism, a secrecy meant to protect both their professional and personal lives, yet in those shadows unseen tensions grew, and this was the height of her career, winning championships, making history, and becoming the most famous female wrestler on the planet, appearing on magazine covers and talk shows. While behind closed doors, she was building a life with a man who would eventually hold more power in WWE than almost anyone else. But their relationship harbored fractures beneath the surface, particularly over children, as he wanted them and she did not. A difference that for some couples can be navigated through compromise, but for them became a widening chasm, and her mental health struggles added to the tension, though the specifics of those struggles remained largely private.
Was Hunter cool with it?
Was he cool with it in what sense?
As far as you doing the magazine?
No, I would say he wasn't cool with it. And part of the problem why he wasn't cool with it was not me showing my naked body, or not the fact that his, girl was in a magazine nude, but he was
Jealous of the
I think so, because he made that a miserable experience for me.
When she posed for Playboy, tensions with Triple H erupted into open conflict, as the magazine deal was entirely her own initiative. She had gone to the Playboy mansion herself, demanded to meet Hugh Hefner after learning other WWE talent had toured the grounds without her, and secured the opportunity without telling WWE management, believing she was bringing them a gift. Yet when Triple H attended the photo shoot, it was only after she begged him, and his presence was hostile, not supportive, leading to fights during what should have been one of the highlights of her career and leaving her in tears. And then came the ultimate betrayal that would reshape the rest of her life. Triple H began a relationship with Stephanie McMahon before ending his with Chyna, shifting power dynamics in ways that would haunt her as Stephanie, the daughter of WWE chairman Vince McMahon and wrestling royalty, became intertwined with a man Chyna had loved and lived with, turning every door that might have opened for her into one that closed, and the ex-girlfriend of the man married to the heir apparent became someone the company had no incentive to protect, leading to her departure from WWF on November 30, 2001, when she was taken off television without warning, offered a $400,000 contract, a fraction of what top male stars earned, which she rejected, demanding $1 million, and negotiations were bitter in a toxic atmosphere, with multiple accounts, including fellow wrestler Terry Reynolds, suggesting the McMahons and Triple H orchestrated her removal once the affair with Stephanie began, meaning the woman who had been a centerpiece of D-Generation X, who had main event pay-per-views, and been one of the most marketable performers in the company, was suddenly deemed surplus to requirements. And once Triple H became part of the McMahon family, Chyna became a reminder of a past nobody in power wanted to acknowledge.
It's only me with my own situation with the WWE, that little tiny circle that like pushes me down, but the rest of the world is like totally supportive and totally behind me, and I'm starting to accept that now and take it, you know.
She couldn't use the name Chyna after leaving WWE because the company owned the trademark, and the identity she had built, the name that made her famous, belonged to someone else, and she didn't legally change her name until 2007, while being blackballed from the industry limited her opportunities, as her brief stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2002 ended in a loss with no future bookings. Her 2011 TNA appearance was equally short-lived, and her final professional match took place on May 15, 2011.
Ric Flair was quite distant to me, and we had like I went up to like hug him and stuff, and he didn't want to be around me because of Hunter.
The politics of wrestling had turned decisively against her, as former colleagues who once celebrated her in the locker room now kept their distance in public, and the fear of crossing Triple H was palpable, leaving the very industry that had made her famous treating her like a stranger. And after leaving WWE, Chyna's life entered a period of profound turbulence, with betrayals compounding and pain accumulating like interest on a debt that could never be repaid, as from 2003 to 2005 she dated Sean Waltman, a former D-Generation X colleague who became something more in a tumultuous relationship marked by multiple engagements and breakups, two damaged people amplifying each other's worst tendencies, where the love was real but so was the destruction. And in 2004 a sex tape titled One Night in Chyna, filmed in 2003 during their relationship, was released without her consent, selling over 100,000 copies and generating substantial revenue for distributors, while she claimed she received nothing, leaving her feeling violated physically, sexually, and financially as a private moment became public consumption and altered the way the world saw her, transforming her from a wrestling legend who had fallen on hard times into a figure the public viewed differently. While the industry used it as justification for keeping her at arm's length, though the real reasons were tied to her connections to powerful people who preferred she stay away. And in January 2005 she was arrested for domestic assault on Waltman in front of his children as the relationship descended into chaos, spilling into violence, with Waltman acknowledging her struggles with drugs and mental health, making her life a public spectacle. And later in 2005 she stripped and jumped into a fish tank at a New York nightclub, further cementing her downward spiral in the eyes of the world. On the Howard Stern show, she appeared slurring her words, the world watching her unravel, and after leaving WWE, she had aspired to become the female Arnold Schwarzenegger in Hollywood. But without the Chyna trademark, she faced an identity crisis that undermined every move, redirecting her career into reality television on The Surreal Life, Celebrity Boxing, and The Anna Nicole Show, before eventually entering the adult film industry as a way to make lemonade out of lemons, though she later regretted some choices. And in 2007, after the death of her friend Anna Nicole Smith, she appeared on Larry King Live, drawing direct parallels between their lives, the media ridicule and public struggles, seemingly predicting a similar fate for herself. And in 2008 she was found unconscious with cuts on her arm after a party, followed by a 2010 overdose on sleeping medication. The same year she appeared on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, initially denying addiction and refusing the label even as her life showed overwhelming evidence, with drug use including methamphetamine creating what she described as a time warp where progress stalled and years passed without forward movement. Until in 2012 she made a dramatic decision to move to Japan to teach English, escaping her ruined American reputation, walking down the street without being recognized, existing free from the weight of her past, and building a new identity in a country where her wrestling career was known but her tabloid scandals were not constantly in the news. Teaching English to Japanese students in a structured and purposeful role, and between 2012 and 2015 she converted to Mormonism, joining the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in what appeared to be a sincere search for something solid to hold on to, gaining structure, community, and clear rules. T offered her a framework for understanding her suffering and a community that accepted her as a convert rather than judging her as a celebrity. But the demons followed her across the ocean, and distance from America couldn't heal the trauma she carried, as late night Twitter and YouTube rants about WWE betrayals became public cries for help that the world largely ignored or mocked, with a woman who had once dominated Madison Square Garden now fighting battles no one could see, posting videos in the small hours when loneliness became unbearable, and her sister Kathy revealed that attempts to help her with rehab were unsuccessful, as Chyna cut off communication with her family for years, sometimes sending threatening messages, turning the estrangement that had begun in childhood into complete isolation in adulthood, a loneliness total and reinforced both by choice and circumstance. And in her final years, Chyna wanted one thing more than anything: reconciliation with WWE, acknowledgement, and the Hall of Fame induction she clearly merited. Yet in 2015, during filming for a documentary called The Reconstruction of Chyna, she showed up unannounced at WWE headquarters seeking money she believed she was owed, only to be turned away by security, as the company that had made millions from her image refused her entry. And that same year, when Roddy Piper died, Chyna attended his funeral, driven by grief for a friend.
Piper just passed away. You had a relationship with him. You wanted to go, but yet you knew who was going to be there. And
well, that's the thing I didn't know, though. I wasn't even thinking about that. I had no idea that Hunter was going to be. When he showed up, I was like, oh my God. But I was totally there for Roddy, and like, just I was like heartbroken.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about anybody else.
She saw Triple H at that funeral, but no broader reconciliation occurred. The encounter was brief, the wounds remained open, and the question of the WWE Hall of Fame hung over her final years like an unanswered prayer, as every year when WWE announced its new class, fans hoped to hear Chyna's name and were disappointed. Despite her undeniable accomplishments: first woman to win the Intercontinental Championship, first woman in the Royal Rumble, first woman in the King of the Ring, a genuine draw during wrestling's boom period who had changed what was possible for women in the industry. Yet WWE delayed year after year, citing her adult film career and personal issues while inducting others with far less controversy, with Triple H giving interviews acknowledging her contributions while explaining why inducting her was complicated, and the result remained consistent: no solo Hall of Fame induction for Chyna while she was alive, critics calling it hypocritical to the point of absurdity. Noting others with scandals like Jimmy Snuka and The Ultimate Warrior had been inducted without hesitation. But Chyna was different, too visible in her struggles, too outspoken about her grievances, and too connected to uncomfortable truths about powerful people, and inducting her would require acknowledging her, confronting questions about how she had been treated, and forcing Triple H and Stephanie McMahon to share a stage with the woman whose life had been upended by their relationship.
It's hurtful. It's hurtful. You know, like, at the end of the day, I come home here and I have my water and my apartment and whatever, but I'm alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like an MC club, you know, like a motorcycle club, like a brotherhood, whatever. You know, wrestling is not like that.
She was alone, as wrestling wasn't a brotherhood, and the industry she had given everything to offered nothing in return, with a Hall of Fame she deserved remaining out of reach. Yet in her final interviews there were glimmers of hope, as she had moved back to California, secured a new apartment in Redondo Beach with an ocean view, reconnected with old friends at conventions, and found unexpected love from fans, seeming to rebuild her life after 6 months when those close to her had feared. The worst, but on April 17, 2016, Joan Marie Laura died in her Redondo Beach home at 46 years old alone, with her last social media post, somewhat incoherent yet seemingly positive, becoming one of her final communications. And her manager found her on April 20th after 3 days without contact, the body discovered amid clutter. Cell phone, iPad, clothes, pillows, toys, painting a stark picture of isolation. While the Los Angeles County Coroner's autopsy, released in December 2016, ruled her death accidental, caused solely by herself and the substances she had turned to for comfort, escape, or numbness, with the combined effects of alcohol and prescription drugs including diazepam, nordazepam, oxycodone, oxymorphone, and temazepam, each amplifying the others until her body simply stopped, and her mother described her as an alcoholic who drank cheap wine and was addicted to prescriptions, watching from a distance as her struggles became public knowledge, while her manager noted she had exceeded her usual doses of Ambien and Valium in her final weeks, reflecting either increasing tolerance, growing desperation, or both, as the history of drug and alcohol abuse that had plagued her for over a decade finally caught up with her, with prior hospitalizations failing to prevent this tragic outcome. The rehab appearances hadn't cured her, the move to Japan hadn't saved her, the conversion to Mormonism hadn't protected her, the ocean view hadn't healed her, and the love of her fans hadn't been enough, while her brain, intended for CTE research to help understand head trauma in wrestlers, was too decomposed to be viable, denying her even in death the chance to contribute something meaningful, and her ashes were scattered at sea in a rhinestone urn, with WWE issuing a statement acknowledging her as a pioneer. The same company that had kept her at arm's length for 15 years refused to induct her into the Hall of Fame, turned her away at their headquarters, and blackballed her from the industry. Suddenly remembered her contributions, with corporate social media accounts posting tributes, the official website running obituaries, and the machinery of wrestling remembrance cranking into action. As tributes poured in from all directions, hashtags trended worldwide, and RIP Chyna dominated social media for days, with the world mourning a woman it had largely abandoned while alive. Former colleagues who had avoided her praising her in death, people once afraid to associate with her now sharing old photos and fond memories, and the wrestling industry that had treated her as radioactive suddenly embracing her memory, as now there was no risk of awkward encounters or uncomfortable questions, making it easier to honor the dead than help the living, with Jim Ross describing her as someone who couldn't escape the hole after losing wrestling's acceptance, the only place she felt truly valued. And finally, 3 years after her death, in 2019, Chyna was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as part of D-Generation X.IT. Was a group induction, not the individual recognition she had sought, not the acknowledgement she had deserved in her lifetime, and not the solo moment in the spotlight that her pioneering career had earned, as she shared the moment with Triple H, the man whose relationship with Stephanie McMahon had complicated her career and contributed to her exile, along with Shawn Michaels, X-Pac, Road Dogg, and Billy Gunn, the other members of the faction she had helped make famous, with her name read alongside theirs and her image appearing on the screen with theirs. Yet she wasn't there to accept the honor, to give a speech, or to finally receive the acknowledgement she had craved for so many years. While a memorial video played during the ceremony and the crowd cheered for a woman who couldn't hear them, the recognition coming 3 years too late to matter to the person who had wanted it most. Her story standing as one of wrestling's most heartbreaking what could have beens. A trailblazer repeatedly let down by those around her, by the industry she helped build, and by her own untreated demons. A woman who deserved better from her family, from her partners, from her employers, and from herself. A woman failed at every turn by the people and institutions that should have protected her. Yet the women who main event WrestleMania today walk a path that Chyna carved through years of resistance and ridicule. The female wrestlers who compete for championships that actually matter, doing so because Chyna proved women could draw money and interest the same way men could. And every time a woman enters the Royal Rumble, every time a woman competes in a match against a man, every time a female wrestler is treated as a legitimate athlete rather than a sideshow attraction, Chyna's legacy is present. And even if her name isn't always mentioned, there will never be another Chyna. The ninth wonder of the world, the first woman to hold the Intercontinental Championship, the first woman in the Royal Rumble, the enforcer of D-Generation X, a woman who changed professional wrestling forever and paid a price no championship could ever repay. She died alone in her apartment, surrounded by prescription bottles, 3 days before anyone noticed she was gone, waiting for a recognition that came 3 years too late. Still carrying the wounds from a childhood that never healed, from relationships that ended in betrayal, and from an Industry that used her and discarded her, with the barriers she broke remaining broken and the doors she opened remaining open. But the woman who walked through first, who absorbed the resistance and the ridicule so that others could follow, never got to see the world she helped create, never got to watch the women's evolution her career made possible, and that was the tragic fate of Chyna. Thanks for watching. And check out the other cards on the screen.